Hi, this is episode 44 of the Stick Figure Historian England series. Enjoy it. Or else. Charles may have not been happy on Wight, but he was well treated. He was allowed free range of the entire island, a lovely little place filled with friendly, kind people. When he first arrived, a Royalist woman is said to have been among the first to greet him, thrusting a fragrant damask rose in his hand as a little token of support, the only she could give. But this was still not his throne at Whitehall, and the dream of that throne the king would never let die, so long as he lived. There must be a way. With the help of some loyal friends, Charles managed to get a letter smuggled to the Scots. He told them he had changed his mind. I am willing to try the Solemn League and Covenant for 3 years, but I need your help to regain the kingdom. Several more letters passed between Charles and the Covenanters over the next few months. At first, the Scots were skeptical, and with good reason, but they were not altogether unwilling. The new year of 1648 had scarcely begun when Governor Hammond's trouble started. There was a little Royalist uprising on the Island of Wight. Nothing serious, it was put down soon enough, but it was sobering. Hammond began to think that perhaps letting the king walk all about was not a good idea. Charles was shut up inside Carisbrooke Castle now, but still Hammond was very gracious to him. The king was allowed to get fresh air whenever he wanted by taking walks in a field right beside the walls. One chilly night, in the very early spring, Charles climbed up into a window facing this field. The window was blocked with great iron bars, but the king was a rather thin person. Kind of an obvious fact if you're a stick figure, and he was sure he could get between them. A friend waited for him 10 feet below at the bottom of the castle walls. They had planned this out together many days before. Once the king got out, he would tie a rope around one of the window bars, slip down, and then they would run off together. The man watched as Charles put his head between the bars, then his shoulders, and then the king stopped. He was stuck. He was so stuck, in fact, that he could not even pull himself back into his room. It was quite a predicament. All the faithful friend could do was watch helplessly from below as the king struggled so hard to free himself. Yet, at long last, Charles was able to squirm his way back inside. Still, the king refused to accept failure. It was not a failure, he insisted, only a setback. If they could just cut one of the bars, he could easily make it through. He and his friends took more care with the planning this time, and came up with a better scheme. Jane Warwood was the one the king looked to most for help with this escape. She was a staunch Royalist woman who had helped him before while he was at Hampton Court. Jane had smuggled gold to him while he was there, and had also helped with that escape as well. In this second service, she was not alone. There were many people that helped with Charles' escape from Hampton Court. Jane herself actually constantly looked to an astrologer named William Lilly for advice regarding the setting of their plans. This time, Jane had managed to get Charles a file and nitric acid to cut away the bar in the castle window. And even better, she had secured a ship to take him to Holland. It all seemed too good to be true. And that was because it was. Jane began to grow uneasy. She suspected that some of the king's supposed friends were actually Roundheads in disguise. One day, as she waited at the docks with the Holland-bound ship, she noticed some men spying on her. This convinced her that someone must have betrayed their plans, and she sent a message to the king, warning him not to come. And she was right, for no sooner had Jane's letter arrived than the king was moved to smaller apartments on the north side of the castle, which were much harder to escape from. Hammond was getting ahead of things before they happened this time. Hard-headed as ever, Charles was still bound and determined to go through with the plan, whatever became of it. He bribed the 2 guards watching over him to keep quiet, and climbed up in a different window. He had still managed to keep Jane's file and the nitric acid, and with these he set at once to sawing at one of the great rods of iron. Further and further the tool and chemical bit into the bar, until at last only a little piece was left. It was at that instant that the door opened. Apparently, the bribed guards had been pricked in their consciences, and had gone and confessed to Hammond what they had done. And it was the governor himself who now stood in the doorway. We can only imagine what Charles must have felt in that moment of discovery, sitting there in the window beside the cutaway bar, and the file still in his hand. Surely it was one of the most awkward points in his life. But Hammond wasn't angry. The good man could not help but be amused at the humor of the situation. "I have come to take leave of your Majesty," he said with a little smile, "for I hear you are going away." And the king laughed right along with him. That was the end of his attempts to escape from Carisbrooke Castle, for which you may be sure Hammond was quite relieved. That same month, the gay month of May, Royalists all over Britain took up arms one last time for their captive king. Cumberland, Sussex, South Wales, and even little Kent, though so close to London, raised up the fallen standard and declared for Charles. The Scots, too, who had at last taken up the king's offer to try their covenant, came pouring down from the north in spades. But Fairfax and Cromwell were ready for them. It was only a matter of a few months before every last one of the uprisings was ruthlessly crushed. The Battle of Preston in August was a fitting marker of completion. Thereafter, the Scots were sent running homewards in total shambles. Thus ended what is often called the Second Theatre, or part, of the English Civil War.